Hello and welcome to today's webinar, NIGP Certified Procurement Professional, Connecting Certification to Your Learning and Career Aspirations. Today's presenters include CEO Rick Grimm, along with Diane Daly, the Director of Certification Programs, with special guest Rick Gentry, Procurement and Contract Services Manager with the City of Lee's Summit. If at any time during the webinar you need tech support, please send me a direct chat. Remember to engage with your peers by making sure you have your chat option selected to everyone. During the webinar, please submit any questions you have to the chat or Q&A box, and we will take those during specified parts of the presentation. Rick, would you like to get us started?
Yes, Justin, thank you very much for the introductions, and welcome to all of you on, at least in the United States, a day after the Memorial Day holiday. It's really tough getting back in the groove, I'm sure, even with a 3-day holiday. So we really appreciate the fact that you have joined us for this conversation. And as Justin mentioned, this is really a focusing on how you connect certification to your career aspirations. And really even though we're focused today on the Certified Procurement Professional certification that NIGP launched just under 2 years ago, we're also going to take a look at all of the options that are available to you as a public procurement professional. So it's really important to understand how those all fit in. How does certification fit in to the rest of the certification or credentialing products that we have? Now, one thing that we recognize, though, is that we have been dealing with lots of disruptions in the public procurement community. We're actually moving from one disruption to another. Now, in some cases, we know that we're still dealing with those supply shortages, whether it's PPEs or it's microchips or it's a shortage of labor. We're still really struggling with those issues in public procurement, but we're moving from that disruption to another disruption, which is really a shortage in talent. Brought on by not only the Great Resignation, where people said, you know what, I'm just ready to retire. It's my time, and they're vacating with all of their institutional knowledge. They're vacating their seats in public procurement. We also know that the generations behind the baby boomers like me and Diane, that this is a shrinking workforce, and therefore we're really dealing with a very competitive job market. Now, the good news for you, if you are a hiring manager in public procurement, that's bad news. And you know that if you're in public procurement and you see public procurement as an aspiration, a competitive job market really works to your benefit, because there are fewer individuals to fill a larger number of jobs. And so one of the issues that we really want to focus in on today are, what your career aspirations are, and how do you utilize these new programs that NIGP has offered in its credentialing system to really benefit your particular career. And so really the question really is I think that we are at a critical crossroads. And so the question is, where will your journey take you? And I think back, Grimm's fairy tales, because my name is Rick Grimm. Lots of people ask, are you related to the brothers Grimm? I said, no, but I have a brother. but there is this familiar story that was not a part of the brothers Grimm writing, and it deals with the two characters you see on the screen. And if you're familiar with them, it's from Alice in Wonderland, and it's Alice having this conversation with a Cheshire cat, which I think is really kind of applicable to this whole conversation they're having today. Alice says to the cat, would you tell me, please, which way I ought to go from here? And the cat says, well, that depends a good deal on where you want to get to. Alice says, I don't much care where. And you know what the answer from the Cheshire cat is? Well, then it doesn't much matter which way you go. Now, the reality is that with all of these changes that we're seeing in public procurement, a rapidly changing workforce, with public sector organizations competing for talent, the question for you is, how intentional are you in mapping your career path? And if you don't much care or prepare, you're right that it doesn't matter which way you go. But if you do care, the focus of today's conversation is how does NIGP work as your trusted advisors through pathways as a roadmap? And so I really do want you to think about, oftentimes, I'll tell you, I've been in the profession, well, I've been working for NIGP for, close to 25 years now. But before that, I was in the seats just with you. I, started in public sector and public procurement. And we always thought, hey, by the way, someone else has to determine what my career path is. And if there's anything that I can emphasize for you today, it's about you taking control of the career path that's available to you, because we are dealing with public sector organizations competing for talent. And so let me ask you, we're going to do a quick pulse. Where are you in your career journey? Are you new to procurement? Are you in that point where you're doing some competency development? Or you see yourself as an emerging leader or an accomplished leader? Or maybe you plan on retiring? If you could just answer that first poll, that will help us understand where our audience is today.
And we'll give everybody about 5 more seconds. And Rick, here are results.
Okay, well, the majority are either new to procurement or are in that kind of a development phase on your competencies. Actually, that's very, very good news for this conversation. And another quarter of you are emerging leaders. So if you look at the combination, more than 80% on this call are beginning their process or somewhere in the kind of the beginning stages or maybe the middle stages of your career journey. And you look at wanting to be an emerging leader. And that's exactly what this certification is all about. So thanks for responding to the poll. So everything that we have done in the last couple of years has connected with the program called Pathways. Again, what is Alice asking the Chester Cat? Which path should I go? And it's really important that you know what your roadmap is. And so that's why Pathways was created. It's for every phase of every stage of your career. Now, I remember in the old days when I was on your side of NIGP, being in public sector as a practitioner, we would all go to the same class. We would go to the 3-day class. We would drink from the fire hydrant, and we would do the basic public procurement, and then we do the intermediate public procurement. It really didn't work into every phase of every stage of your career like Pathways is built. But not only Pathways provides that customized roadmap, it actually links the learning to the credentialing options that are available to you. It integrates learning with recognition. But it all focuses in on this competency framework, public procurement competency framework. And we'll be talking about this because it is so critical to both the learning and the credentialing. You'll see the linkages, particularly as it relates to the certification program. So it's built on those 7 major focus areas, starting with strategy, policy, legislation, planning, sourcing, contract administration, leadership, and business principles. It really is the kind of the full-blown area of competencies that you need in order to be successful in the workplace. So it's not just slicing and dicing those procurement attributes that we need to know, like, what do we do about planning and how do we source? When you bring new suppliers into the marketplace? Do we choose an RFP or an invitation for bid, or et cetera? But it really expands beyond that, particularly in the areas of leadership and business principles. Business continuity is also a part of that. And then within those 7 focus areas, you have that modular learning. You're seeing 33 competency statements. So for example, in strategy, you have the competencies of mission and public benefit, transformation and vision creation, and social responsibility alignment. All 33 of those competencies have been built out into foundation classes. And now our next step is to build the advanced courses on these modules and the management courses. So you can see how robust this is. But the reality is that you begin to pick and choose where you are in your career. That's the flexibility and the customization of pathways. So if you're new to procurement, which a lot of you were, rather than taking all 33 at once, here is a roadmap of taking what is relevant. These 5 classes are probably the best place for you to start. Or if you're in that competency development, you'll add on to those classes additional ones. So we added that now on standardization and cost and price analysis. The point is that pathways want you to take only what's relevant to you today and as you grow in your career. And so if you're looking at leadership, you'll see a different series of pathways, courses that help you emerge as that leader. And again, 80% of you are in one of those 3 categories. Now, in addition to pathways becoming a learning and being able to pick and choose what learning is important to you, the credentialing system is exactly the same way. You earn those credentials based on where your career goals are. We have everything from certificates to specialization. And again, today, we're going to focus on certification. When we're talking about competency badges, when you take any of these 33 learning competencies, you earn a competency badge. These are digital badges, so you can place them on social media. You can recognize them in your job script or your resume or Avita that you're doing. They identify you as having that expertise in one of those competencies. We're just showing 4 right here. But think of the ability, again, that flexibility that happens with pathways is that ability to bundle some of these competencies together. So NIGP has actually created 5 core certificates. You're seeing 3 here on the screen. And yes, John, a copy of this presentation will get to everyone at the end. So I'm glad you asked that question. So you don't have to scribble these down. We're going to send you the entire slide deck. But you can see we're going to bundle mission and public benefit, enabling regulations and compliance, ethics, integrity, and transparency, legislation and legal environment. Those 4 competencies get bundled into a core certificate on strategy and policy foundations. And as you can see, there's another bundling of planning and analysis, another bundling of sourcing and contracting. We also have one for warehousing, and we also have one for leadership. Again, this is all about you and your career path. You may find, hey, I don't need a core certificate in strategy and policy. I'm fine with that. What I really need to focus in on planning and analysis. And again, there is a certificate for you, something for everyone that's been built into competency areas. But imagine then even going further, if you decide to do that and being able to bundle some of these core certificates into a designation. And so we have this Public Procurement Associate designation. We've issued 124 to date, and it's actually the bundling of those 3 core certificates. Now, I mention this specifically because when we get into the certification program, you will find that this designation is one of those pathways for eligibility in earning your CPP. So I just kind of mentioned that in terms of how that works. In addition to certificates, there's specializations. These are really focused in on a specific knowledge that has become very important to public procurement. The 2 most popular that we're doing now is on construction procurement and technology procurement. And again, we've issued 750 of these specializations. And then today we'll talk about certification, the NIGP Certified Procurement Professional designation. This program is just under 2 years old. The first exams, we had pilots, and the first exam testing window was in August of 2020. Through February, we had certified 822 NIGP-CPPs, representing 41 states and 5 provinces in less than 2 years. Now, we just wrapped up. Matter of fact, there could be people taking their CPP exam today. It's the last day of May. but those numbers will increase with the May exam period. So, we could be seeing 850, 860, 870 recipients. So the bottom line is you're seeing that traction, which is this picture here is from our leadership forum that was in Anaheim last August. And these were the newest recipients that earned their CPP. So again, just like Pathways has different ways in which you could do learning, the credentialing is done on that same way. If you're new to procurement, it could be a designation. It could be competency development would be in a core certificate. If you're emerging leader, it could be a specialization. You can see as the accomplished leader, that's that CPP, and then competencies are for everyone. So again, there's a lot of flexibility, and it's all about you and your journey to see what is best to fit into the pathway for you. And today, of course, we're going to talk about certification, but I didn't want to do certification in a vacuum, because quite honestly, it is integrated through the public procurement competency framework with everything else that we do at NIGP. So as we talk about certification, I have a second poll for you. Where are you in your educational journey? Do you have a master's degree? If you have a bachelor's, associate's, no degree, or you're currently certified as an O or B. Now, if you could answer that poll, that will help Diane and I as we structure the rest of the webinar.
And we'll give 5 more seconds. And here are results.
Okay, so we have just under 50% are coming in with a bachelor's or above. Substantial number with no degree, high school diploma, 20% of you, and then just under 1 out of 5 that are certified as an O or B. That really helps us because this poll really fits in with that eligibility criteria. So let's talk kind of the overarching about the CPP. But what makes it unique is it is targeted to that mid to executive level leader. And oftentimes people say, well, what do you mean by leadership? Because a lot of times we think about the leader is the one who's really sitting in the corner office. It's the chief procurement officer. It's the senior who has a lot of individuals reporting to them. But we look at leadership differently. Leadership are people who influence, who motivate, who innovate, who convinces others to follow, inspires confidence to action. We will define in the certified procurement professional handbook what leadership means, and you'll see how that ties in as we go through this program. But I don't want you to get stuck at, wait a minute, I don't supervise anyone. This is not for me. That's actually not the case. And it's targeted to those mid to executive level leaders. And it is based on the public procurement competency framework. As I mentioned before, it's a piece of research that was done by the Volcker Alliance. And it really anchors the Pathways program, both in terms of learning and credentialing. And what you'll find is the exam, and we'll talk about the exam through this webinar, is based on 43 competency statements coming from the competency framework. It's also focused in on what you do. So the exam is going to be competency-based, situational questions. It's measuring knowledge, skills, behaviors, and performance within those 43 competency statements. And then it's also, what also makes it unique is it is integrated. It is part of NIGP's family of offerings. So it's connected with Pathways, as I mentioned earlier. It's part of our research program to make sure that as we find new approaches or new issues that come to the forefront as a part of research, that research informs the certification commission to make sure that the CPP remains relevant. It's also connected to that bigger issue of workforce development, career advancement, where your career aspirations are, what is succession planning. And then from a practical standpoint, we utilize a single sign-on in our databases. So while there is separation between your learning record that you would have at NIGP and your certification record, you're utilizing the same sign-on to look at both your learning activities and your certification and recertification efforts. So a couple of things to mention in terms of the guiding principles. We wanted to really focus in on competency. We wanted to make sure the exam was rigorous, it was flexible, that it was relevant, that it was comprehensive, not just the procurement functionalities, but all the other competencies you need to be a well-rounded professional in public procurement, like leadership, like business continuity, that it's valued by all professionals. And we'll mention this, this number 5, because that was really critical. We know how important standards are to public procurement. So we developed this certification program following those best practices that have been developed by the International Standards Organization, ISO, and is accredited by ANSI. So we're going to make sure that we are following all of those rules. Now, the way, speaking of rules, the way in which ANSI says a certification program should be developed is to make sure that you get a group of subject matter experts, your peers, that really serve as a practice analysis panel. And they actually go out with a survey. And that survey is really kind of assessing the frequency and the importance of activities of that target audience, that mid to senior level leaders. 1,200 responses to that survey that was done in 2019. And it's that survey that really helps inform the certification commission on the eligibility requirements and the exam content. In other words, there's not 2 people sitting there in a back room and say, listen, let's ask these questions. It really comes from a very structured process, beginning with that practice analysis panel and the survey itself. Now, we're going to go through a lot of the information today that you need to know, but we can't cover everything. So we can't overemphasize enough the importance of you reviewing, reading through, and understanding all of the attributes of this certification program that's available in the handbook. It's everything about the program, the eligibility, the application fees, appeals, the code of conduct, everything is there. And it is a digital certification handbook. So if you go to the NIGP website, you'll do it 24/7. You have a certification tab on the homepage, and you'll be able to get a digital copy of that certification handbook. So we like to now kind of shift to this, what we call ears to peers, because Diane and I could talk about certification till the cows come home, but it's really important that you hear from your peers what have they said about the certification program. Our friend Stephanie Dion, who is now at the province of Manitoba, says the certification is inclusive and the content really promotes critical thinking. As I said before, it's about situational areas, so it's about critical thinking, which is essential to the profession. Or Travis Pierce down at the Raleigh-Durham Airport Authority says that it's empowered him with the confidence and expertise needed to drive and deliver results. And he encourages all procurement professionals to seek certification as a demonstration of competence, knowledge, and skills. Lisa Mahalko at the Georgia Technology Authority, she's been doing this for years, decades. And she says, for the last few years, I feel like I've been hitting the ceiling. I needed assistance in moving to a next level. By achieving that certification, she can now showcase the technical and, again, behavioral skills that the certification exemplifies. And today we're really privileged to have a good friend, Rick Gentry. Great first name, by the way, Rick. I'm very partial to Rick's, who is the Procurement and Contract Services Manager at the city of Lee Summit, Missouri. So welcome to this webinar, Rick. And if you could just you have a little bit of your quote there, but I think what does the certification mean to you in terms of this career development that you've been going through for a number of years? So they're kind of interested in knowing that, and then maybe a little bit of insight on how you prepare to sit for your CPP. So welcome, Rick.
Well, thank you, Rick. Welcome, everyone. For what has it brought to me and the value that the certification has brought to me. It's something that gives me great pride in earning, and helps kind of identify a lot of the skills that you don't get through or that are not recognized through the other certifications, and kind of recognizes the leadership and the value you bring to the organization and leading the organization down the pathway it needs to be traveling, as we find a lot of organizations that don't have good leadership or someone there to guide them in the right direction, a lot of that. So that was very honorable to be recognized for that as part of the certification. My journey into procurement, like most of us, we probably did not plan as fourth graders in elementary school to go into procurement. It was kind of an unknown field to us at that time. My background, like several of you, I earned a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in another field. I came up through education as a teacher, a principal, and a school district superintendent in a small district, and had the opportunity to go to a large district. And I was trying to be the CFO, but they hired an outstanding gentleman to be the CFO, but the superintendent recognized the skills and talent I had at that time and said, we got this job, it's called a purchasing director. And so I talked about the job and I accepted that, and that started my role in procurement in 2000. And so with that, I was able to move forward, and thought I knew a lot about procurement and purchasing at that time. And my knowledge grew in the skills. I joined NIGP in 2007 and started to learn about certification, and went to my first forum in 2008, where I met Rick for the first time and the staff at NIGP, and took the CPPO prep course and thought, holy cow, what have I got myself into? So over the period of the next few years, I took classes and learned to really sharpen my saw and my skills, and increase my knowledge about procurement, and also build my network and became involved in my local chapter to learn more skills and build that network of resources that you never can have too many of. So I set for my CPPO test in, I think it's 2016, and earned that. And then went on to retire in 2018 from public education, and then transitioned to city government in 2000, at the end of 2018. And I'm a kind of a profound lifelong learner. So I kind of was trying to looking, what can I do next to learn? And that time NIGP was doing their survey and research for the Pathways program. And I participated in the, filling out the survey and giving feedback, and was very excited what the program is and what it's become and what's available to staff as I get new staff in. To kind of help prepare for the CPPO, they offered the bridge class, I believe that summer of 2020, for the folks that were already certified, either had their B or their O. And I took that class, and then there's just kind of reviewing that. And I noticed, looking at the description of the program, the module B, for those of you that already have your certification, focuses more on leadership, how you can help the organization to developing your staff, and how you help your staff grow and become leaders in their own right. Making sure, encouraging transparency within your organization, good ethical behavior. And then, as I did in my last organization, I left in 2018, I had a succession plan there. And after I'm here in the city, probably I got another 4 or 5 years left. We're already kind of starting to lay some of that groundwork for succession planning as well. But it's always looking for those opportunities to where you can help yourself become better, and serve your agency better, and help them, lead them, guide them in the right direction. So it's kind of helping you identify those talents that you have and recognize those talents you have and the skills, and moving forward, and then just helping your organization and agency.
So it's, you said we met in 2008. So I have known you for 14 years and did not know that you started your career in education, even as a school principal. That's amazing, because that's a journey of itself. And I think, to the point that I think is really, really critical, is sometimes we don't think that we're going to be in public procurement. Our journeys may be at different locations. We're all here at the same intersection, but we come from different different backgrounds, different practices. Our friend Catherine, who has posted on the Q&A, well, Catherine is certainly not new to procurement. I'm sure in the private sector for 20 years. Competition, always trying to get the best price due to competition, finding different ways of sourcing. And so really what Catherine needs in her career is to understand some of the nuances that are different between public and private sector procurement. And so that really kind of helps focus in on both the certificate programs, the certification program that we're talking about now, and also learning attributes or modules that Catherine can take advantage of. And by the way, Catherine, we'll talk about how where you would sit in terms of the eligibility criteria for the CPP. So don't be worried about that. We'll get to that point. Rick, just in a real quick snapshot, how did you prepare for your CPP?
For preparing for my CPP, I worked on, so I did kind of refreshed through my own materials. And then I kind of spent some time just talking with others about leadership development. And what actually had one of my staff was taking the Leaders Edge program at the time through NIGP. And I kind of visited with her and kind of finding out what they knew and some of the new terminology and phrasing were. And a lot of it I relied on my background because part of my educational leadership training was in leading an organization, growth of individuals, and going and leading organizations through change and improvement. And as I reflect back on the exam and being in the first group that took it in that August of 20, we had additional questions, but a lot of, I think I relied a lot on my the knowledge and skills I developed in leadership and change and how to promote procurement within the organization and how to develop others and communicate that to others and bring procurement's value to the organization and how we can help the organization in many ways.
Terrific. Well, Rick, we're really grateful for your time sharing your perspective. Do you mind if people want to reach out to you and just ask you a couple questions? Would you be willing to put in the chat box your email contact so they can reach out to you?
Oh, most certainly, yeah. You can reach out to me anytime. That's one of the things I love about NIGP is the networking and the kind of the big family you have now. You can reach out to me, any of our members, and be more than happy to help you. So yes, I'll put my contact information down in the chat. Thank
Perfect.
you, Rick.
Good hearing your voice again.
And we'll see you in Boston.
Okay, will do. Okay, we have one more poll. This really helps Diane and I as we go through the rest of the webinar. Your biggest concern about the CPP, is it cost? You can select all that applies, by the way. Is it eligibility? Is it taking the exam at a testing center or time required to prepare? Just take just a quick couple of seconds, select all that apply.
And we'll give everybody 5 more seconds. And here are results.
Okay. 2/3 of you, time required to prepare and study. Not a big surprise. This group is very consistent with what we've seen in other webinars. Diane and I do this on a monthly basis. Cost and eligibility, quite a bit high up there. So we will address all these issues. So at this point in the program, I'm really honored to turn the conversation over to Diane Daly. Diane has been with NIGP now for 3 years. Diane has, although she's been with the team for 3 years, she has done work in professional certification programs for 2 decades and really understands the value of certification, all the kind of the defensibility of the certification, how certification programs are built. And she's brought that tremendous knowledge and expertise into the NIGP program to make sure that we really develop the best solid program for our members and for the professional community. Now, what I do want to also mention is that there is a very strict firewall between the work that I do at NIGP and the work that Diane does in the certification program. And what that essentially means is that everything related to the certification program, how eligibility criteria, having a consultation with Diane on testing centers and test results, that's all going to be on Diane's side. And I don't have any access to the information that Diane shares with you on a one-on-one basis. That's so that NIGP is not influencing what's on the exam, that she works with an independent certification commission to develop the certification questions, and then relies, of course, on that practice analysis that I mentioned before. So there are many areas within this program that Diane's going to be your very best friend. When it relates to NIGP, how do you prepare? I can handle those issues for us. So without further ado, as they say, Diane, I want you to take it away and talk about the 5 things that are usually on top of mind, including this audience that has talked about these 5 key questions.
All right, thanks, Rick. And everybody, you can put your questions in chat or in the Q&A. I like to talk to myself a lot. It is part of my charm and personality, but we also like to interact with y'all. So if you've got any questions at all, pop them in there and we'll hit them as we go through. So we're gonna take a look at the 5 big questions. Am I eligible? How do I apply? How do I get my appointment? How do I study? And then how do I recertify? So let's take a look at the am I eligible? For the NIGP-CPP, we have 6 pathways or 6 eligibility pathways. And it requires formal college, university education and relevant work experience, or if you're a current CPPO or CPPB, the formal education and the work experience is not required. There are no training hours, no prerequisites, no informal courses for you to take. So let's take a look. Pathway A has the highest level of education required and the lowest years or months of work experience. So for pathway A, graduate degree has to be specific to one of these 5 areas. So if you have a master's in business administration, you see that's not one of the 5 areas listed here. But if you earned your MBA with a concentration in one of these 5 areas, that would be listed on your diploma and in your transcripts, and that would qualify for pathway A. And if you have any questions about your own personal experience, I put my email address in the chat for you. So pathway A, the graduate degree and 24 months relevant work experience. Pathway B, bachelor's degree and a graduate level certificate from an accredited college or university in public administration, public policy, supply chain, or procurement. And that's 36 months of relevant work experience. Pathway B is the pathway with the least number of applicants to date. And that's because it requires the degree and the graduate level certificate. So now let's take a look at pathway C. Bachelor's degree, any discipline, and 48 months of relevant work experience. Pathway D, the 2-year post-secondary diploma, or as Rick mentioned, the NIGP Public Procurement Associate designation. So we have got several people who are now working towards the NIGP Public Procurement Associate designation, and that takes the work experience to 72 months. All right, pathway E, we learned during the practice analysis survey that there are many leaders in the procurement field who did not complete a college or university degree. And that is what pathway E is for. No post-secondary diploma required, and you need 96 months of relevant work experience. And I'm going to define relevant work experience in a minute. And then pathway F like Frank. If you're a current CPPO or CPPB, or you have lapsed within 1 year, or so your expiration date is less than 1 year from your NIGP-CPP application date, you would come in through pathway F.
Hey, Diane, I know that you always take these numbers down. How many on the call today are in the no post-secondary diploma?
I think our survey showed 19%.
Yeah, about 1 out of 5. So the
Right.
difference really is that you can come in pathway E with that 8 years experience, or if I go back to pathway D, you can cut the number of years of experience down to 6 years if you get the associate designation. And NIGP offers that as a boot camp, or you can do them independently. But typically we're seeing that people are going through that program in 2 to 3 months. And so that's an option for you on pathway D. If you're coming in with no secondary diploma, you could get that associate designation in 3 months and cut the number of years of experience down by 2. Just wanted to mention that to you.
Right. That's a good point, because 96 months of work experience that's a big requirement. So let's take a look at the next one. Pathway F eligibility, as I mentioned, for CPPOs and CPPBs. You do not have to prove any formal education, no work experience. You would upload your current CPPO or CPPB certificate to the online application. And a big point for you to keep in mind is through May 2024 testing, individuals who apply as Pathway F candidates only have to successfully complete one of the 2 exam modules, and that would be Module B. After the May 2024 testing window ends, regardless of what pathway, eligibility pathway you came in on, or when you submitted your application, everyone is required to successfully complete both exam modules after the May 2024 window. So keep that in mind. If you're a CPPO or a CPPB, you've still got until May 2024, but the clock is ticking. All right, so let's talk about relevant work experience. For pathways A through E, relevant work experience, full-time work experience in procurement, public or private, purchaser or seller, must be within the past 10 years. You cannot record any work experience 10 years beyond your application date. You can have multiple job titles, multiple employers, and then all work experience is verified third party. You will name your employment verifier. You'll give us the name, job title, phone number, and email for each employment experience. That saves you. You don't have to upload your resume. We don't have to try to figure out your resume. This puts the assessment in the hands of the applicant, and then that person works together with their verifier. So on the next slide, you see, we're talking about work experience verification. The photo is directly from the handbook. So you'll want to read the handbook. It's a must read anyway. You will state on your application that you read the handbook. This is where you'll go so you can assess your own work. For a job to be at the mid to executive level, it was learned through the practice analysis survey that an individual has to perform 20 or more of the technical competencies for each qualifying position. That doesn't mean one position you do 8, the next position you do 12. No, it's 20 per position. And then, as I mentioned, all employment verifications are handled exactly the same way. On the application, you will list the specific person, supervisor, boss, or HR rep. You're going to provide their name, their job title, their email, and their phone number. And they will verify not just the agency and your job title and your starting date and your ending date. they will have to verify on the work experience form the 20 or more technical competencies that you identified as a part of your job. And then all verification has to be through the auto-generated employment verification form before we can look at your application. All right, so it looks like we may have some questions, Rick.
We do. One in particular, actually, let me go back to this slide here, because Catherine was asking about her experience in the public procurement. Again, your work experience can be public or private. And then just re-clarifying these different pathways. Pathway F is only if you are a current CPPO or CPB, or you let it lapse within 1 year. That's the only, that pathway is limited to current CPPOs and Bs. Now, we do know that a lot of candidates want to come through and earn their O or B. So again, as Diane mentioned, be cognizant of the fact that you want to earn that and know that when you earn it, you still have through May of 2024. So the clock is ticking in order to take that the bridge exam. But Crystal, you mentioned bachelor's degree. So you really are talking about pathway C, because it could be in any discipline, but you do need to have 4 years of relevant work experience. Again, that could be either private or public. So with that, I know I'm making you a little dizzy with the slides, but I don't have any other questions on that. So Diane, why don't we go to the second big question, how do I apply?
All right, how do you apply? The first thing you want to do is read the handbook. As a part of the application, you will sign off on the code of ethics and candidate declaration statements. One of those statements is that you read the entire handbook. So you also want to confirm that you're eligible through one of the 6 pathways. You want to confirm that your work experience, if your pathways A through E, aligns with 20 or more of the competency statements. You want to confirm with your supervisor or HR that they will verify what you put on your application. It is always a shame when a verifier comes back and said, no, the person didn't do any of that, or no, I'm not going to verify that. We recommend in the handbook, and I'm recommending on the call, and we'll recommend in emails, or if you call us directly, you want to work with your verifiers in advance. Let people know what you've said so they know what you want them to verify. And then as soon as you complete the online application and you're ready to submit it, you will be required to submit the, to remit the payment, the application fee payment. All right, so applying, there are no set deadlines, no late fees. You do need to apply online 30 days before the desired testing window begins. So right now, registration and payment are open for August testing. They will close June 30th. So if you want to test in August 2022, you need to be sure you allow enough time to apply, get approval, and then register and pay for August testing. If you need special accommodations through the Americans with Disabilities Act, we are happy to handle those for you. We have a process in place. And then you will have to upload your diplomas or your certificates. You'll have to input your employment information and your verifiers, and then you pay the application fee. All of this is online. So let's talk fees. The application fee is non-refundable, $150. Another reason to read the handbook. I don't think I'd want to pay $150 knowing I would not get a refund if I hadn't read the handbook and the policies and the procedures. And then your exam fee, the testing fee, is $100 per module. We have 2 modules. Pathways A through E, you have to successfully complete both modules. Pathway F, you only have to complete module B through May of 2024 testing. And then once your application is approved, it's valid for 2 years from that approval date. Special accommodations, if you require them, that is fine. We follow the ADA policies, as does Pearson VUE. You want to allow extra time. So I'd say at least 45 days before the testing window. And we have a specific request for special accommodations form. It's in the handbook as an appendix, or you can send me an email. I'd be happy to send you the form. You're going to download it, print it, give it to your licensed healthcare professional. They have to complete it. And you need to have had an appointment with them, a visit with them within 1 year from your application date. So older appointments won't work. All right, so on that form, your healthcare professional is going to provide the diagnosis, recommend accommodations, and record the date of the latest appointment. This is another place where the firewall Rick mentioned comes into play. On an application, as soon as the person checks yes, they are requesting special accommodations, that application goes to me and me alone. I will be the only one reviewing your private information, and then the accommodations that are approved, I will tell Pearson VUE what those are. I will not tell them why. So not only is there a firewall between me and Rick and the other departments, there's also a firewall on my team with your private information. All right, schedule your exam date and time. Once your application is approved, you're going to get an approval email from us, and it will direct you to select a testing window and pay the exam fee. We have 4 month-long testing windows each year: February, May, August, and November. Right now, as I mentioned, we have registration and payment open for August. That will close June 30th. We'll open up registration and payment for November testing in early July. So once your testing fee is paid, you have to choose the exam module and the testing window that payment is for. Then you're going to receive a communication from Pearson VUE. That's the authorization to test email. That's going to have instructions on how you will access the Pearson VUE system to schedule your own date and time at a testing center. And all testing does take place at Pearson VUE testing centers throughout North America and globally. All right, life happens, you've scheduled a date, but something's come up and you can't take the exam on that date. The same way you're going to schedule your appointment is the way you cancel your appointment. I can't help you with that because I don't have access to Pearson VUE's appointment system for you. So you would cancel your appointment online, giving at least 24 hours notice, and you can reschedule within the same testing window for free. Pearson VUE charges us $100 for every late cancellation and missed appointment, and we pass that directly on to the candidate. But if you have, if you do try to cancel less than 24 hours out and it's a non-emergency, Pearson VUE will not allow you to do so. And if you don't appear at the appointment, you will be a no-show. And that means your $100 testing fee for that window and that module is forfeited, and you'll have to pay a new $100 testing fee to register for a new window. Or you cancel your appointment with 24 hours or more. You don't want to test in the same window because things have popped up. There is a $50 fee to transfer to a new window. So when you are applying, you want to have the handbook open, you want to have your calendar open, you want to have a plan for what you're going to do. All right, and then I mentioned that we have 2 exam modules. Well, the great thing about module testing is if you are pathway A through E and you're required to successfully complete module A and module B, let's say you test on both, you successfully complete module A, but you do not module B, then you only have to retest on module B. That does not mean we're only going to make you take the questions that you missed. You're going to retake the entire module B test, module B module. And then the retest fee is $100 for each module. And you get 3 opportunities to sit for each module during that 2-year application period if needed. All right. Do we have any questions?
We actually have some great ones.
Yay.
So I apologies if I don't pronounce your name correctly. Shanda asked about whether those requirements are for both the CPB and the Public Procurement Associate. The answer is no. There are no requisite requirements to begin the process of getting your Public Procurement Associate. So you could be, as a matter of fact, we identify that as relatively new into procurement or new into public procurement. So there's no prerequisites. There's no application. It is simply registering for those classes. Again, NIGP offers it as a boot camp, so it's a bundling of those 3 certificates, or you could take the certificates individually. It matters not. You can put them in any order that you want. But the requirements are different. There are no eligibility requirements for the procurement associate, public procurement associate designation. Then Catherine asked, what comes first? So I actually think that's a matter of choice. I have my CPPO and my CPP. It's very, very important to me. I think you'd look at your career and identify, do you get your O or your B first, and then you go and get your CPP? It really is a matter of preference and really understanding the nature of the 2 programs. Look at the pricing, what are the eligibility requirements, what recertification means. Now, I will be the first to tell you that if you are committed or you're currently in a pathway to get your CPPO or your CPPB, you should continue to pursue that. Because as you get that and you're successful in getting your O or B, you are now in pathway F, which is an abbreviated exam, only 1 module, and a lower exam fee because you're only paying for the 1 exam. So if you're committed to your O and B, get it, get that completed. Remember that that program only offers exams twice a year. So your next available time would be October of 2022. And just keep in mind that that clock is ticking. And I mentioned that, and hopefully I'm not muddying the waters, is there's not a reverse process where if you get your CPB, you have a smaller exam to take for your O and B. It works actually the other way around. So again, a reduced exam fee and only 1 module exam if you get your O or B first. And just to be very clear, pathway F is only for those who have a CPPO or CPPB, either current or it's lapsed. In all other cases, you want to look at, remember, it's a combination of education, whether you got it at a master's or a bachelor's degree, and work experience. So if you're new into public procurement and you just started, for Leona, just started in April of 2021, as I mentioned earlier, then this certification program really is you're not eligible for it because you don't have the years of work experience. And that's why I said, hey, maybe what you want to look at first is the associate designation, or get a certificate, or get a specialization, whatever works for you. You can look at the the differences. And Robin, I think I talked about taking classes. Yeah, taking classes now. You can't sit for the exam for 4 years. I think you make a decision on where your education is going to be, what learning is important. As I said earlier, you want to make sure that learning is relevant to the work that you're doing today. And I think I would be remiss in saying, don't take classes in order for you to be able to sit for exam. Take classes because it's a precious commodity. You may not have funding sources, and that's coming out of your own pocket, or you may not have the time to do it. Take classes that are relevant to your career, and then see how that fits into certification on the backside. And then Michael wants to know the difference in career pathways for the O, B, and CPP. I want to speak specifically to the CPP. Really, this is in that area of mid to executive leaders. And I know that a significant number of you mentioned that you see yourself as an emerging leader. This program is specifically for leadership. It focuses, you'll see the exam content focuses a lot on leadership. But this is a personal preference. You're not going to go wrong by selecting CPPO, a CPP, or the NIGP designation. They're just different options available. And quite honestly, there's options that are available to you in the private sector as well. Our sister association, the Institute for Supply Management, has a certification program. APICS, Supply Chain Management, they all have certification programs. I think it's really important that you look at all of those and then make a decision on where you want to fit in. Now, for Lynn, your supervisor says to obtain the CPP first because it would be easier to get. I don't know if that's necessarily true. As I will talk about in the CPP, these are all about competency-based statements. So it is applying knowledge to situations where there are two right answers and you have to select among the best answer of ones that could be right. So I wouldn't necessarily agree that it is easier. If in fact, easiness is tied to eligibility. So if you don't have a bachelor's degree, for example, you're not eligible to sit for your CPPO. So if you don't have a bachelor's degree, then maybe the CPP is easier in terms of eligibility. But I certainly wouldn't identify it as easier to sit for the exam. And again, these are kinds of conversations that if you want to have a chat with Diane, she's always going to be available to you because every situation is a little bit different. But I cannot emphasize enough, this is about you, your career, and the credentials. Credentials are portable, right, folks? In other words, if you are now working in the city, but 2 years from now, you're working for a school district, you're working for the state, all of these credentials that we've been talking about are portable to you. They go with you. And so really, I want you to focus in on where you see your career going and all the different pathways that you have available to sit for a certificate program, a designation, a specialization, and of course, the certification itself. Diane, I think that's I think I addressed all of the questions there.
Oh, and somebody wants my info in chat. I put it at the very beginning, but I'll put that now. And then Rick, send it over to you to talk about preparing and studying.
Okay. Two things that are really important. To know the exam content and say, maybe Lynn, this could address your issue about whether you think this is easier or not as easy. You got to know the exam content because that's the way you prepare. And then know what options are available for you on prepping. Rick had mentioned earlier in his discussion how he prepared. And by the way, 2/3 of you said it's the time and effort for preparing for the exam that are top of mind for you. So I really want to spend a little bit of time going over these issues. First of all, it's important to note that the same public procurement competency framework that is used to identify your eligibility requirements, the 20 out of 43, the learning modules, it's all based on that competency framework. 43 specific competence statements. Every single, very transparent about this. All 43 competency statements are identified in the certification handbook. There's not a smoke and mirrors here, folks. You can look at them very, very clearly and see what those 43 competency statements are. And because of the practice analysis survey, they're based on weighted percentages. So I don't want you to think that 1/7 of your exam is going to be on strategy and 1/7 is on policy and legislation. The survey, practice analysis survey, helps define the weighted percentages. And I'm going to show that to you in just a minute. And then for each competency, again, this is the issue that I can't really emphasize enough. Exam questions are written to address real world scenarios. where the candidate, you, applies the knowledge and the experience to determine the best course of action or solution. So a lot of times when you're taking basically a knowledge-based exam where you're regurgitating the 6 steps or the 7 principles, in this particular case, you are applying that knowledge and the experience that you've had in procurement to determine what is the best course of action. And by the way, because I'm a practicing professional, I know it's been a few years, but I was, when I had to go in front of my county commission or I had to go through my school board, there were really 2 ways that we could do that. Neither was wrong, but we had to select the best course of action given that scenario. And that's why these scenario-based exams really test your ability to be successful on the job. So when I talk about the 43 competency statements, here's an example. This is the one that comes to the leadership focus area. So it's about how do you create and foster a professional ethical culture, or how do you foster continuous improvement? How do you provide professional development opportunities for your team? How do you engage stakeholders, both internal and external? So your internal relationships would be within your own procurement team, or it would be with the user departments, whether it's public works or finance or parks and rec or police and fire. And it's also your external relationships that you have with your supplier community. And how do you align procurement changes within the entity goals? Again, the certification handbook is going to walk you through all 43 of those competency statements. And then let's talk about how the exam is structured. Diane, I have mentioned that there are it's 2 parts of a modular exam. As you can see, and the advantage of a modular exam is a lot of flexibility. Now, if you're like me, and I'll be perfectly honest, I've told everyone this, I am a horrible test taker. And so I do much better if I can focus in on one aspect of the exam, get it done, and then go to the second one. So because you have that flexibility, you could take both modules A and B. By the way, there's no order on this either. So if you want to take B, then A then B, it's really up to you and how you want to prepare for the exam. But some people will take both modules maybe on the same day. They'll take one module 8 o'clock, take a little break, and come back at 1 p.m. that same day and take both modules. Or some people will take one module the first of the month and the second module the last of the month. Or a lot of flexibility, you could take one module in May and take the next module in August. It really provides you that flexibility on how it's going to work for you. And because I don't take exams very well, and if you're like me, you'll go, yeah, I understand what you're talking about, is that each module is scored independently. So with a lot of certification exams, you could be 1 or 2 questions off. You have to take the entire exam over again. And that's one of the reasons why NIGP bought into this 2-part modular exam. You can be successful with A, unfortunately not successful with B as an example, and all you need to do is take B again. You don't have to go back and repass the modules that you were successful with. Each module is 80 multiple choice questions, and the exam module is 2 hours. So, and here's how this breaks down. Remember, I talked about the 7 NIGP-CPP focus areas that have come from the competency framework. So there's the 43 technical statements. You can see roughly half are in module A and the other half are in module B. Module B is specifically set up as a bridge, again, for those who are coming in pathway F. In other words, they have their current CPPOs and Bs. And so what are you going to find on module B? You're going to find questions that you did not have on your O and B. This is the kind of the gap, as we've done a kind of an analysis. Here's the gap between the CPPO, the CPB, and the CPP. I know that's a lot of P's and C's in there, but that's where the gaps are, and those are the 23 modules statements. Now you can see how the percentages wrap in here. And actually, this is actually even a better look at it. So for module A, you can see a focus really is on that kind of what we call the core components of procurement: planning, sourcing, contract administration. That represents, 2/3, almost 70% of the exam. But when I switch into module B, again, module B is for those items that were not on my CPPO or my CPP exam. You can see that the combination of leadership, business, and strategy is representing about 70%, a little bit more than 70% of the exam. So again, as you're thinking about preparing, if you're more familiar with, because you've been doing procurement for a long period of time, and you're really familiar with sourcing and contract administration, you may want to do module A first. You can get that out of the way and then focus in on module B. But the way in which you structure this, whether you're taking them all at the same time or you separate them, that's why it's a 2-year application window, giving you maximum flexibility to be able to choose which direction you want to go in. And then immediate exam results. So when you go to the testing center, you're finished with the exam, the proctor at the exam center will hand you a piece of paper and will tell you whether you are successful or not. Now, getting actual kind of an indication of how you scored, if you were not successful, that will come from Diane's team at the conclusion of the testing window. So all you're going to get is a kind of you passed or you didn't pass. So you'll see that at the testing center. One area, and we actually don't mention this on the webinar in terms of a slide, but one of the things that happens with a computer-based exam when you're doing this at the testing center is that computer-based exams allow you to kind of flag specific questions. And so if you're stuck, you don't know, maybe it's A, maybe it's B, you can flag it. And then at the end, if you have time left over, you should have time left over, you can go back to all those flagged questions and recheck your work one final time. So maximize the 2-hour period, because that's a good technique as well. So let's talk about prep options that are available to you. There is the digital prep guide. It's $45 per module. It's separated between module A and B because if you're only taking the bridge exam, module B, you only need the one prep guide for module B. Now, it's a digital prep guide. We can also do it in print for you if you prefer to have it that way. You'll buy that off of the NIGP bookstore. Some folks prefer to have a prep course that's instructor-led. Now, let me be pretty clear on there. What happens is there's some pre-work, there's some independent study that you're involved with, but you will have an instructor for that class, and it will be available for you to ask questions. And then there'll be probably 2 or 3 times throughout that period where all of you will get on a Zoom call and they'll walk through some of those areas. So that's available to you. You can see that there's price points in that, and it includes both the prep guide and the assessment. So let's talk about the assessment, because this is a great tool that's available to you. It's again by module, so it's $49 per module. And what it does is it provides you a series of questions. Matter of fact, you're going to get 75 questions per module. Again, you can buy them separately, or of course you can buy A, then B. It's up to you. A lot of flexibility. And on the 75 questions, they're going to be more of that competency-based, more situation-based. And it gives you immediate feedback. So if you go into the exam and you say, I think the answer is B, it's going to tell you whether you're right or wrong or why. And at the end, as you complete the self-assessment, it's going to give you a customized report. It's going to say, listen, you were really great on critical thinking. Maybe you need to focus in on contract management. And it will then give you a series of courses that only as a recommendation that you may want to take that are part of the pathways to develop that competency. And if you notice on the left-hand side, that $49 fee comes with a $49 discount code in case you want to take that class. So in fact, this self-assessment is free to you if you take advantage of that discount. Now, you can take the assessment up to four times. And by the way, because it's online, you could take the first 20 questions, walk away, come back the next day, come back the next week, and take the remaining balance. It's a lot of flexibility that's valuable to you. But what I've heard from a lot of your colleagues is they will take the self-assessment right out of the chute, just to understand where their strengths and where their shortcomings are. And then they'll focus in on the shortcomings, and they'll come back and take the self-assessment 1 or 2 more times before they sit for the exam. Again, these are options available to you. It's not a mandate, but we have had a lot of people that have mentioned the online assessment was really, really beneficial. We also have the Insight Study Group. If you're thinking about August, the study group for August will be starting probably in the next couple of weeks. It really kind of connects with your fellow colleagues who are studying for their certification, and it's done through, well, the initial contact is done through Insight Communities. So you'll see an Insight Study Group, sign up for that, and then as we have co-facilitators who will, work through the program for you for about probably about 4 to 5 weeks. Then you'll sign up for that specific study group. And then our good friend David Nash has question of the day. He has done this for both the CPPO and the CPPP, and he now does it for the NIGP-CPP. So just write to Dave at www.qoftheday.net, and he'll be glad to help you in there. Okay, so that's how you prep. That's how the exam is built. Hopefully that made some sense. It's everything that we're telling you is also in that certification handbook, as well as that 5th question, which is how do you maintain your CPP?
All right, that's me. How do you maintain it? Well, to earn the CPP, you have to show that you have knowledge and skills and technical competencies and abilities to perform the work required of a procurement leader. So you are going to recertify through continuing education. Every 3 years, a minimum of 36 hours of continuing education in procurement content. So that's content covered in the public procurement competency framework or the 43 technical competencies that make up the NIGP-CPP exam. And of those 36, up to 9 can be earned by developing, teaching, or instructing public procurement content. Not required, but it's an option. And then once you earn the NIGP-CPP, if you retire, we will have retired status available to those individuals. And that's it for me, Rick.
So Diane, a couple questions, and I actually don't know the answer, so we're going to put you on the spot. Work experience, does it have to be US-based work experience? We know it's not, that Canadian work experience counts the same way, but if you got work experience somewhere in Europe, how do they document that?
Well, that's going to be the exact same way all work experience is documented. We don't have a process just for US, a process just for Canada, and a process for anywhere else. So the same rules apply. Has to be full-time procurement within the past 10 years, requiring 20 or more technical competencies. The individual will have to name the verifier by name, by job title, by phone number, and by email. And everything has to be in English. So the auto-generated verification form will go out in English, and all responses have to come back in English. So we don't really care the location. It's the type of work and the timing of the work.
And I know Shanique had to leave us early, but her question could be pertinent to others. So she's been doing the same work for 9 years, but with a title change. So does she list each title and year separately on the work verification?
Sure, I typed a response directly to her, but When you have a job title, generally it's a promotion. So you're also changing your technical competencies. So yes, you would report that as a separate work experience. You would probably, you may have the exact same verifier, which is fine, but it is not at all unusual to see someone at one agency for 8 years, but while at that agency for 8 years, they had 4 or 5 different job titles and positions. So yes, you'd list each one separately, and you would work with your verifier, because it might be that, you had your same boss for all 3 or 4 positions, and they will get 3 or 4 different verification forms. So yes, you want to list them all differently.
Okay. And one of the things that, I know that sometimes work verification gets you get a little more queries about that. So really, that's why Diane and her colleague Logan are there for you. Give them a call. They'll walk you through the process. But one thing that I want to emphasize, oftentimes certification programs want to look at your job title and make a decision on whether you're qualified or not qualified, or they'll require you to submit a job description. And the reality is, in public procurement, job titles really do not reflect what you do. As a matter of fact, maybe a working title does. And so that's why when this program was built, we didn't want to emphasize the job title at all. You're putting it in the in your work experience listing, but it really is for you to be able to self-assess. And the beauty about self-assessment is, whether you do 20 or more of those competencies before you even submit your paperwork. They really take the guesswork out of it. And the only thing that, and Diane mentioned this earlier, make sure that you're also having conversations with that person who's going to be your third-party verifier. It could be a former supervisor. By the way, if that supervisor has since retired, but you can reach out to that person, great. It can also be someone that's in your human resources area. But it really takes the guesswork out of knowing whether a particular job that you performed is going to meet the criteria, because you're self-assessing. And so, Shanda, again, in the handbook, you're going to list all the 43 competencies are going to be in there. And we showed the page earlier, but I want to see it's probably in about somewhere in the 30s, but just grab the certification handbook and you'll see all 43 competencies. And by the way, when you then register or you apply for your certification, because it's online, for each job title, it's actually going to give you the list of the 43. And you're going to say, yeah, I did that one. No, yes, yes, yes. And it actually will come out with the bottom line total to make sure that you have at least 20 of those competencies. But you're absolutely right. What you need to do is review those competencies in the handbook. Make sure that you know that prior to submitting an application.
Right. And your verifier will only receive, the employment verification form that will show your name, the job title you said you had, your starting date, your ending date, the agency, and it only shows the 20 or more that you selected. So we're not asking your boss or supervisor to change the list. You want to make sure that what you check off is what they will verify. So they don't see all 43. They only see the 20 or more that you selected.
Right.
And then I see there's a question about the 80 test questions. On each module, there are different forms, which means not everybody's going to see the exact same questions. And of the 80 questions, there are 5 to 6 questions that are being piloted. They're being tried out to see how people do, if these are valid, do the statistics and the psychometrics work. So there's not a particular number. Each exam form has its own cut score and degree of difficulty weighed in. I would, so I don't have a specific number to give you, because module A and module B are different. The questions that you get are all different. I would say, though, that in a certification program, as in a class, you don't want to aim low. You want to aim very, very high. The exam is assessing how well you can work as a leader in procurement. So you definitely want to aim high. Don't aim for the minimum, but aim very, very high. And then if you're not successful, you will get a score report at the testing center. It shows you all 7 focus areas, the percentage of questions on the exam for each focus area, and then the percentage of questions you answered correctly. We can't share with you the specific questions that you missed or what you got right, but you want to aim high.
Great. And Mona Lisa, hopefully I'm pronouncing your name correctly. If you were registered for a CPP prep course, that prep course does come with both the prep guides and the self-assessment. It's all included in there. And if you have any questions, reach out to us as well. So let me wrap up because we're almost at that 90-minute level. So eligibility, 6 pathways, no procurement training required. It is focused in on what you do. So a lot of emphasis, as you saw, particularly in Module B, on leadership. But it's a comprehensive view of what we do in public procurement. So that combination of leadership, business principle, strategy, 72% of Module B. 2-part module exam for testing windows, 3 opportunities to pass, immediate notification. Your application fees are $150. The application is good for 2 years. Your exam is $100 per module. Your re-exam is $100 per module. That's a direct pass-through from our testing agent. And then recertification every 3 years, 36 contact hours at $125. Real quick, I saw Veronica registered for the B prep. Is that different than the CPP bridge exam? Absolutely is different. It's coming from a different domains. So if you're taking the CPP prep, you should be familiar with how that exam is structured. You can go onto the UPPCC website, and they will also identify the testing domains that are in their certification. So it is different than the CPP bridge exam. So, and I think, Sabina, I think that Diane just addressed the question of the passing score on each test. So with that, we are just grateful that you spent 90 minutes with us. Again, you can go to the NIGP website. There is on the homepage a certification tag. When you go on certification, that's where you're going to find your application. That's where you're going to find the prep courses. That's where you're going to find all the prep materials. And you're also going to find the certification handbook. So please take a look at that as well. And with that, there's Diane's contact information one final time, mine as well. And I will turn it over to Justin. Justin, you can talk about how they get a copy of the presentation.
Yeah, so the presentation slides were sent out this morning. So if you were registered, you should have received an email for that. If you didn't receive it, please email distancelearning@nigp.org and I'll send you a link to download those. So thank you, Rick, Diane, and Rick Gentry. Please take time to fill out the evaluation survey. Once we end the webinar, you'll receive a prompt to take that. Both the recording and survey links will be emailed to you later this afternoon. Thanks again and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks, y'all. Bye-bye.